Welcome to the Radiant Life with Tatiana. I am your host, and I'm obsessed with empowering you to live and create the best life possible. I'm a master mindset coach, breathwork facilitator, and a passionate little Latina who loves sharing the magic behind your subconscious mind and energetics. If you're looking to uplevel your mindset, learn all about spirituality and manifestation, and to be inspired in making a change to embody your best self, you are in the right place. My goal is for you to see and unlock your limitless potential, to have the tools to break free from the chains holding you back so you can create and live your most radiant life. I am so excited to have you here listening today. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello, loves, and welcome to the Radiant Life podcast. Today's episode is an interview with Milli, who is a manifestation and business coach who uses unconventional manifestation methods that work for real women in life and in business. And today's conversation is all about talking the truths of really what it takes to manifest and how to embody more of who you are, your true self, with love, grace, and compassion. She shares her journey and how she supports women in real life with real practices that truly work when it comes to manifestation. This is a beautiful, juicy conversation. I hope it's everything you need to hear. So let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode on the Radiant Life podcast. Today, we have Milli here, and she's going to be sharing so much juice. She is a mom and a thriving manifestation and business coach, and she uses unconventional manifestation methods that work for real women in life and business. And I'm so excited for you to explain a little bit more of what that means in a world where manifestation is like very hot and trendy right now. But welcome, Milli. I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, when I like dove into the title of manifestation coach, because prior to I was going with self-love coach. And what I recognized was that everything that I was teaching really did fit under the umbrella of manifestation and was required to manifest in the most authentic and powerful way.
Yeah.
And manifestation became so trendy, and I didn't even realize it was happening right as I actually chose that to be my niche. And I was like, oh, darn, now I'm just another manifestation coach. But that did not discourage me, because I have, like you mentioned, like this unique and unconventional sort of approach to it, because I'm not coming from it. I'm not coming to it from a place of let's just vision board and do affirmations and,
positive vibes only type.
Not at all, right? Like those things are great, and you can find out how to do that stuff anywhere. It's like you can Google a 9-step manifestation process if you want to, but that's not where the real work comes in.
Yeah.
And I just see something so much more valuable and deeper once you are kind of over the flashy side of manifestation. You're like, oh, this is actually the work to create the human I want to be and the life that lights up that human, not the one that like I see on Instagram and Pinterest.
With all of the material things.
Yeah. So in my messaging recently, I've been saying like, you're kind of at the point where the French Polynesian vacations
I saw something.
The G-Wagons and Chanel bags are making you roll your eyes just a little bit. Like, you still are down for that stuff. You love it. Like, I love luxury. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for like giving yourself full permission to, like, I went hotel lobby hopping this weekend. Like, I'm just, I'm here for that. But at the same time, that's not what I'm focusing on when I'm doing my manifestation work. I'm focusing on, who do I want to be? And I want to be proud of myself, and I want to be proud of my life, not for the external accomplishments, but because of who I'm being when I'm showing up, like in my relationships. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like your whole life. Okay. Before we go deeper into that, let's start off with, for those listening, just share a little bit of like who you are now, what you fully do. And can you share just like, how did you get into this work and doing what you do? What's been your journey around that? And then we'll dive deeper into what this means.
Okay, where do I start? Okay, so how did I get into this? I always wanted to work in the realm of like psychology. Let's just put that. Like I have homework from when I was 7 years old that says when I grow up, I want to be a psychologist. Okay.
Wow.
So I've always had this fascination with humans and the mind. And I did what I set out to do. I got a degree in psychology. And I was convinced I was going to do my PhD and become a psychologist and all of that. But I got through my undergrad and I was like, whoa, this is so textbook stuff. Like, this is not real lived experience stuff. Like, I want to be in the nitty gritty of life with people. I don't want to spend 7 more years in school,
just reading books and studying.
Yeah, like, and every textbook felt like I was reading the same thing through a different lens. And I was like, oh, this is actually so boring. So I got out with my undergrad and I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I thought, well, I'd recently gone on a bit of a health journey myself. I'd gotten into the gym, which I had never been interested in, like, physical activity or sports or anything like that previously in my life. Like, gym was my most hated subject in school, which is funny. But I got into the gym. I got into this like strength journey, and it really changed my perspective on like the whole, like, well, I always prioritized the mind, right? Like, I always thought that it was just so much more, like, intellect was so much more valuable and important than physicality. And that really changed my perspective. So I was like, well, why don't I become a personal trainer for a while until I like figure my life out, right?
Yeah.
So I became a trainer, and then I went on like a nutrition journey. I feel like this is a very typical sort of journey, and I've met so many people in the coaching space.
I was gonna say it's so much like me too, but we start with our external shell sometimes to then realize, oh, it's actually within us.
Yeah, exactly. So I did the physical journey was a really, really important part of it for me. Because like I said, I only prioritized the intellect. And so coming through and then bringing in the physical, like, I really enjoyed that part of my journey. But then I realized I didn't actually enjoy fitness or nutrition coaching. I didn't actually want to be helping other people with those things. I was glad that I learned them and that I could apply them to my life and the people's lives around me that I loved, and have it in my back pocket too. Like, it's very valuable to have like those certifications that I've done. And I just had this limiting belief at the time, because I was quite young, 23, thinking that I couldn't be a life coach because I didn't, even though I had lived a lot of life experience, because I actually came from quite a traumatic childhood. And that's part of the reason why I was interested in psychology to begin with, because I thought, whoa, like, I need to understand where people go wrong. You know what I mean?
Wow.
That was always my mission. Like, hey, if we could figure this out for people, like, we could prevent a lot of sadness, right? And that I figured that out as a kid, right? Basically, like, oh, this is mental stuff. But so I went on that journey and had this limiting belief that I was too young. And I played that out for a while, like kind of dabbling with the nutrition and not feeling fully satisfied by it. And then I kind of went into like the fertility world, because I was also going through that part of my life, wanting to have kids, was very passionate about natural fertility and birthing. And so I became a doula for a minute, and that was really fun.
Wow.
Yeah. So women's health, right? Like the process of becoming a mother, matrescence is the word for it. It just all, like, the women's journey, like, very much fascinates me, right? Because I was just, I saw my mom like that. That was the major impact in my life, is that my mom struggled a lot. And, after my brother was born, she had postpartum depression. And then, that's where the spiral sort of started to happen for her with like her mental health. So it was really natural progression for me in terms of the study path I took. And then after I had my son, he was a couple years old already, I had another foray into a completely different business. I had a product-based business. I made baby carriers for a while. which I
That's
sold
awesome.
that. And then I was like, okay, I'm claiming this. Like I started coaching. I started actually just like life coaching on the topics that I was really passionate about. So that's now been probably 3-4 years that I've just said, okay, listen, like, you know, I'm not just injecting my wisdom into nutrition and this, because you do that as a fitness and nutrition coach. You do give a lot of like mindset advice and life advice and whatever. But now I'm at a place where I'm really, really just teaching exactly what I've wanted to always teach, which
you're in alignment.
Exactly. And the journey was exactly the way that it was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's actually really funny. I have a very similar story. It started with health coaching too, and the same limiting belief. Well, who am I to support people with life or mindset when I'm only this, whatever age? Are there all these beliefs? And it's like, well, you have, all of us have natural gifts and wisdom, and like some people just, it clicks, and we can support people that way. So yay to coming back to that.
Yeah.
So you support a lot of moms, and I think that's amazing, because I think that topic itself is, I know we were talking about this on our live, like having community and support and not having women believe we have to do that alone. But how have you now integrated these unconventional manifestation methods with now the work that you're doing? And how did you kind of go about either learning that? Was it through experience or studying, or just you creating your own ways to kind of actually understand like the truth around manifestation outside of these vision boards that everybody talks about?
Yeah. So for me, my coping mechanism from like the traumatic experiences I had was perfectionism. It was like severe, like overachieving, overdoing, like, really high grades, all the extracurriculars, like try
doing
to
it all,
look perfect, be perfect, like all of the things to try to feel worthy and loved, right? So I discovered this about myself somewhere along the journey, that like this was actually a huge cover up for like low self-worth and self-loathing, right? Like I was like, how could I not love myself? Like I'm so great on paper, right? And I was like, that's not
totally
it.
different.
How do you talk to yourself? How do you navigate your internal relationship, and then also the external relationships piece too? I had a moment where I was like, you can judge the quality of your life based on the quality of your relationships. And I had to look around, and I was like, ooh, this is not, like this is that. There was like some real reality checks there for me. And what I ended up encountering was the work of Brene Brown.
Okay. Yeah.
Made a huge impact on my life, most specifically the gifts of imperfection. I unraveled my perfectionism and started to view it almost like an addiction in a sense, right? Because it's like it's an addictive, self-destructive cycle to external validation, and trying to run from painful human emotions, which are inevitable, right? Judgment, shame, blame, those type of things. So I've dedicated myself to what I originally was calling like a wholehearted manifestation practice, which really just means like we came here to experience a full range of human emotions. We came here to experience, a very dynamic array of things. And I think the mainstream manifestation world really kind of makes you feel bad for feeling bad.
Yeah.
And like even in Abraham Hicks, which I love listening to, they say when you're feeling negative thoughts or when you're feeling negative emotions, you're moving farther away from who you really are. Which is it while it has truth, like I do believe that's true, there's so much shame wrapped up in that. And I teach manifestation from what I call compassion focused lens, right? And so what that is compassion is the antidote to perfectionism. Compassion is the antidote to shame. compassion is so powerful, and it's not just this warm fuzzy thing, right? Because there's yin compassion, there's yang compassion. It's not all just like sweetness and honey, right? Compassion can be boundaries. Compassion can be, being more stern with yourself, like internal boundaries, right? So it's this unraveling of perfectionism and taking a deep look at shame that exists in this personal development world and manifestation world, and addressing that head on and giving you permission to have a full human experience and to revel in that, and like to feel those moments. Like, sometimes when you have a really hard time in life and it's like, it's painful and it's shitty, those can be some of the most beautiful moments. You can actually like have these moments of like, wow, life is like that tragically beautiful, right? Like it's kind of like that romance and depth that's brought to life that I think is so, it just makes the lived experience so rich,
Yeah. I think I tell like my clients all the time, I'm like, we can't feel the highs of the highs if we don't feel the lows of the lows. We need that contrast. We need to learn those lessons. It's building you stronger. And I love that you stand for this, because I stand for it too. It's like negative emotions aren't bad. That's, again, just a label. Like, how can you see, even in my programs, I try not even to use the word negative emotions, because again, that's a label too. Oh, that's a bad or good emotion. It's like, it's just a lower vibrational emotion. So instead of judging it, just, okay, cool, I feel angry right now, I feel sad. This is what's arising. Exactly. So what can I learn? Why and how can I feel it, but not collapse into it and rise up from it?
And that's part of the compassion that I teach, mindful self-compassion. There's 3 key elements to it. And one of those elements is mindfulness. And the mindfulness piece is not over-identifying with the emotions, and also not sweeping them under the rug, right?
Yeah.
Because there's two extremes with it. And sometimes in like manifestation, we can really over-identify with the emotions because we're trying to fix them or figure them out. We uncover all these limiting beliefs and we spend so much energy on that. It's like, do we really need to? Need to? And then on the other side of it, it's like, oh, don't think that negative thought. If you think that negative thought, you're giving power to it. You're giving it momentum. Just like gaslight yourself into, just don't even, pay that any attention. It's like, okay, well,
and then you're going into avoidant. And it's like, no, then it's going to explode like a volcano one day.
Hello, there is a middle ground. There are tools for you to know how to actually like regulate yourself emotionally. And I actually, even the word regulate kind of gets me now, because I've started to study sort of like the nervous system stuff. And it's like not necessarily even regulation. It's nervous system, like it's understanding, right? It's appreciation. It's working with
the awareness of
your physicality too, right? Because the nervous system, like the somatics of everything is very real and true. And when your body's responding, it's responding exactly how it's designed to respond, right? Like for hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, right? It's like, okay, well, let's look at the circumstances here. Let's look at like the meaning we're giving to the circumstances, and not shame the coping mechanism, and not shame the bodily response to it. And like, we have to like regulate it.
Yeah.
Whip it into shape, it's like,
I love that you're bringing this to my awareness, because I have used that word too, but yeah, even the regulation comes from a place of like something's wrong, and like, and of course, like you're working on improving it, but like meeting it where it's at versus like, I got to do something to fix myself.
Exactly. It's like the limiting belief work too. It's like, are we looking at these limiting beliefs to try to like eradicate them, or are we looking at them with compassion? Are we looking at our nervous system with compassion? Like, oh, hey, you're doing your job. Let's look at the root of why you feel you have to respond this way to begin with, right? And I actually am guilty of it, because I signed up for a nervous system, let's call it regulation membership, and I came in going, damn, I got to get my nervous system under control. I'm like off the rails with my nervous system. It's so like I'm hyper vigilant and I need to like
activated.
I need to calm down, and then the first lesson was, hey, actually your nervous system is reacting exactly how it's supposed to, and we're not making that wrong. And I was like,
wow. Like just feel that permission when you hear that right there. You feel that you're like, oh, I'm okay.
Yeah, like, okay, I'm activated. Yeah, okay, I'm activated. Okay.
Like just that is like, it just is what that is. And like, now how can I move through that versus shaming or judging myself? Like, I shouldn't be triggered right now. I shouldn't be activated. It's like, no, like our body has these mechanisms for a reason.
Yeah.
Maybe it's getting activated too much for reasons that could be handled differently, but it's like, that's just bringing more shame and judgment or
it's too much pressure, right?
Yeah.
It's so much pressure. And that's what I seek to address and pop the pressure bubbles, really. And the worry, like, especially the perfectionist overachieving mind and worry, like, is, oh my gosh, if I pop the pressure, or if I give myself compassion, or if I even consider self-acceptance, I'm going to be mediocre. I'm going to
not be good enough.
I'm not going to be as excellent as I want to be. Like, I have to be hard on myself. I have to be this. I have to do that in order to live the life that I know I'm meant to live. You know what I mean? It's like, is it, do you really need to approach it that way?
Come from that.
What you want to achieve? It's because you don't trust yourself. That's why. That's why.
Yeah. Because if you trust yourself, there's grace and there's ease and acceptance.
Yeah. And so that's another pillar of compassion focused manifestation, is self-trust that we work on.
I love this. I think it's huge, especially when we're in a society, like you said, that I don't know when manifestation popped off and got trendy. I started learning about it in 2016, 2017. And I feel like it's all I see now. And like, you see people on TikTok or things like telling you like, and I do them too, but like, I think at the end of the day, manifestation is doing the inner work. You got to heal the layers. You got to come back to who you are. You got to trust yourself and love yourself. And that's when you can manifest, because that's when you're raising your vibration and you're in alignment to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think this is a beautiful awareness to bring to the world.
Yeah, like all those tactics, manifestation tactics and tricks and methods and whatever, those are like the bells and whistles and the accessories, right? Like,
yes,
they're not what drives the car, they're really not. And obviously we know that the enemy of manifestation is resistance, right? So you just have to look at that, and like, this is why I created compassion focused manifestation, because I truly, truly believe that the teachings of compassion, which are rooted in mindful self-compassion that I brought up before, which is created by Dr. Kristen Neff and Garner. I'm going to forget his first name. I think it might be Scott Garner, something like that. But Dr. Kristen Neff's work is really where it's rooted in for me. And it pops the bubble of resistance. Like, compassion pops so many different areas that can cause that resistance. And it's just, I could talk about it all day, because when you hear the word compassion, you think, okay, yeah, like feeling sorry for someone, or feeling, it's quite simplified. But when you look at all of the elements that are actually involved, like I said, there's the three parts. There's mindfulness, there's common humanity, and there's loving kindness. Those are like the big three parts of mindful self-compassion. And then when we go into each of those, there's so much to learn, really.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who's listening who struggles with compassion for themselves? Like, what would you say would be like the first step? You're like, okay, cool, I need to be compassionate, but like, some people may not even know like fully what that looks like, because there's so much pressure. What would you say?
Well, in Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown, which is where I actually discovered Dr. Kristen Neff's work, because she talks about compassion in there. There's a quote about love, self-love, love in general really, is to stop thinking of it as a feeling and start viewing it as an action.
Okay,
And
I love that.
I think love and compassion are very intertwined, right? And some people have a hard time with the concept of self-love because they think, well, I don't feel warm and fuzzy toward myself. I can't possibly imagine feeling warm and fuzzy towards myself, which I felt that way. I experienced that when I started my self-love journey before I really dove into the idea of compassion itself. And it's that idea of like, well, what actions are loving? What actions are compassionate? What words are compassionate? What choices are compassionate towards myself, rather than, oh, do I just feel it? You know?
Yeah. Because it's true. It's like, well, how are you showing up for yourself every single day? How do you speak to yourself? And I tell people, I'm like, if you wouldn't say those things to your best friend or your daughter or your sister or mother, it's like, why are you saying them to yourself? And so it's, how can you take that action, like you're saying, and speak to yourself in a way that is empowering and respectful and nurturing, because you're not a doormat for yourself. And it's like, why treat yourself so poorly? And instead, how can you treat yourself with love and care?
Yeah, exactly. And there's just so many different practices and tangible things that we can be doing in our day-to-day that create this really safe home base within ourselves. And that's like manifestation. We know it's about who we are, not what we do.
Yeah. Like you said, those are all like, I like to call them like sprinkles and whipped cream and like cherry on top, but that's like not the foundation.
Yeah. And so if we look at it, if we look at mainstream manifestation and the way they teach this concept specifically, like it's identity, right? It's like self-image. It's very external. It's very like, be a boss, babe. Like, you know, it's like, okay, well, what quality, what values, like values are so important. Like that is a huge part of the way that I teach. Like a lot of people are not in touch with or can't tell you straight off the hop. Like if you get into a conversation, well, what are your top 5 values? What do you value most in life? And, you know, are you actually intentionally creating your life in alignment with those values?
Yeah. Your values dictate everything. They are the driving force of why you do what you do.
Yeah. They are the second most actually powerful subconscious driver of behavior. So if you don't, that's from my neuro-linguistic programming certification.
With you.
Yeah, if you don't know, if you're not in touch with it, if you haven't spent the time thinking about it, like clarity is so important for identity, for manifestation, for that, right? And your values really are a huge part of your identity, right? Yeah. So that is like paramount to
your successes in life, because if you're not feeling good, that means you're probably doing something that's not in alignment with your values. And if you don't know what your values are, then you don't know what changes to make.
Exactly. And even if you feel a lot of imposter syndrome, for example, that's something to look at. It's like, are you living? Because the way I view imposter syndrome, it's like, it can mean one of two things. It could mean that you're out of integrity, or it could mean that you're just growing and you're having like growing pains. But you got to look at both sides, because I think most people, when they teach about imposter syndrome or learn about it, it's like, oh, just, ignore it.
Fake it till you make it type of thing.
It's like, well, it could be telling you something, let's look at that first and say like, hey, and then even just looking at your values, like, are these truly the things that you value, or are you valuing these things because you're told you should? You know what I mean? Like, and some people, especially like around money stuff, I find this comes up a lot, and relationships too. Like if you look at people's values, their values don't link up with what they're saying that they want.
Yeah.
You say, I really want this, but it's like, yeah, but it goes against what you actually are, you know, feeling is most important. And some of that can be stories and limiting beliefs, like, oh, well, if I don't put this first in my life, or if I don't prioritize this first in my life, that means I'm a bad person, right? So
again, the labels
and identity, right? So it's all super fascinating to me. And yeah, I've just never heard anyone teach it from this perspective before. I've never even heard anyone else bring up the word compassion while teaching manifestation. So it's just interesting for me the way that it all kind of came out and came together, because I wasn't originally teaching manifestation, right? And you said, when did manifestation become a thing? I've known about manifestation for the better part of my life because my dad was into it. Like he would read, you know, The Power of Positive Thinking, and you know, he would always influence me with the stuff. He was always into personal development, sort of in spiritual things. Actually, both my parents had like a spiritual sort of side to them. So I always had this sort of knowing of it. And then my dad had gifted me some like Abraham Hicks CDs when I started to drive, and I would listen to them, you know.
Love that. But
I kind of fell away from it, you know, in my early 20s, I would say, because it was kind of like, this is a fun party trick, you know, but I've got my real life to build, you know, so I kind of fell away from it. But then when I got really heavily back into my personal development journey, you know, coming into becoming a mother myself and stuff, it was like, and Instagram, I would say Instagram played a big role in, you know, finding people who were teaching on it too, right? And being like, oh yeah, and then having things click, like, oh, and the things that I'm really into, and the, you know, Brene Brown's work and Kristen Neff's work, I was like, this is the missing piece. And oh man, when people come into my containers and they start learning it from this perspective, they're like, oh my gosh, like it's never clicked so deeply until I heard you speak about it this way. And it's like, this is what I've been looking for. And like, that is, I know I'm living my purpose. Like it's so in alignment with my freaking human design incarnation cross. Let's just put it that way.
I love that. And I think that's so true. And I think that's why, you know, I don't really use in the terms of like compassion, but it's in the same realm that I coach on too. It's like, how can you do this with more grace with yourself?
Yeah, grace
more
is
love,
a beautiful word. Yeah.
And versus like do hustle, like judgment. Something that just keeps popping in here for me is talking a little bit more on moms. So I'm not a mom, so I have no experience. And so I don't work too much with moms, but I do know like we have mom listeners, and some women are like, okay, well, what would you recommend when you're busy with kids, or you lost your identity after kids, or what you do? Like it you know, they're so focused on their children. And I would just love to hear your point of view on just as a mom and how you balance and integrate and support other moms through this journey.
Yeah. So, I do have women just to say that come into my spaces that are not moms. So it's not all just through the lens of motherhood. However, I did build it with moms in mind, and busy women, just period, right? Like we're all busy. We all have a lot going on. Yeah. And what I noticed when I took other manifestation trainings was, geez, the amount of work that they wanted you to do. And these programs were designed by older white men, you know, childless younger women, like no offense.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
It's like the amount of work and journaling and the length of the trainings and the number of times they want you to listen to this stuff. I was like, oh my God, another thing for me to feel like I'm not doing good enough at, you know? So the way that I designed it was short, accessible, permission giving, low pressure, like, hey, just like inject this throughout your day. You know, it's almost like, it's funny, I was listening to this, a couple of different TikToks recently about like the difference between, let's say, American culture and European culture, where in American culture, all of the things that are like naturally good for us are taken out of our lifestyles and then injected back in ways that we have to like pay for them. So like physical activity, we need to go and get a gym membership, or like nutrition, we need to go and buy all these supplements, or
organic, even water.
Instead of just having it inbuilt into the way of life, right? So that's why I call it, like, I had a framework that I called Manifest OS, because I'm like, you need to just make this your operating system. Like, you need to make this your way of viewing the world, your way of being, your way of just approaching and handling your life, instead of feeling like, oh man, I need to go do my manifestation practice that I haven't like, and then feeling guilty that you're, you haven't journaled and sat and meditated and all of that stuff. Like, I will be completely honest with you, I don't have a very regular manifestation practice. I just have a way of being and living, and I do the things that I feel called to do. Yes, I'll go through periods where I journal a lot. Yes, I'll go through periods where I meditate. Do I do those things every day? Do I have a 5 a.m. routine? No. Sometimes I've done that. There have been periods where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start getting up early and doing these things because it felt like what I needed, right? It felt juicy and delicious. That's the terminology I use all the time, because when your practice starts to make you feel yucky or resistant or not good enough or guilty or whatever, that's not serving you. That is not serving you. So it's about releasing the shoulds and giving yourself permission to, and it's trust. Listen, again, it's self-trust to always know that you're going to give yourself what you need. A lot of this is about trusting yourself to, first of all, know what you need, have the awareness. I call it compassionate awareness, to be a compassionate witness for yourself, and to know that you're going to come back to the practices or find new practices.
Yeah.
That feel juicy and delicious for you.
What feels good at this point in time. And like, of course, like I teach and preach, like, yeah, journal, meditate. Cause I think they're habits that, like I said, our society doesn't teach us healthy ways to move through it. But like, it comes to a point with my clients, I'm like, yo, you don't need to be doing this every day. Yeah, this was just to teach you how to connect back to yourself. Yeah. But then now it's like, if you want to go dance. If you want to go walk barefoot, like, it's finding ways to embody you, and then having these tools. If you need to move through something, cool, go do breath work, cool, journal it out. But it's not like, that's again, like a very masculine routine, like oriented, do. Yeah. Regimented, to check off the check boxes. I fell into that.
Exactly. That's it. Like, we don't do the things just to check boxes. Right. That's exactly it. And so it's like more of a menu of like, oh, well, what do I want to taste today? Right. Yes. It's like, and that question is it's actually the most compassionate question you can ask yourself. What do I need?
Yeah. I literally say that. I call it a routine menu. Like, what are things that light you up and feel good? That, and in the morning, okay, what are 2 things I can do today? What feels right? And that's how you build that trust.
Yeah. And to me, it's about again, I always wrap it back into identity, because it's just so important for manifestation. But so I teach these 3 levels of identity. There's your source level of identity, there's your human level of identity, and there's your vortex level of identity, right? And so the menus are like, okay, well, how can I connect with each of these levels? It doesn't mean you need to connect with each level every day, but then you have these menus of activities that, like, well, I know I'm always in relationship with myself, and I'm building in these 3 levels of identity, which is helping me become the woman who has my dream life. So yeah. And then it's like, well, which one feels the most juicy and delicious for me at this moment in time? And so maybe it's not that you're doing different things every single day, but you get into these little sort of ebbs and flows of these like routines, right? Like, I know my routines switch up like every few, usually for me, it's like, I'll get into a routine for like 3 to 6 weeks, maybe sometimes longer, maybe sometimes it'll last like 8, 12, but I'll get in a group and then life will happen, right? Like, something always comes up, and then it's like, oh, look, there's the natural wrench in the in the routine. And instead of guilting myself to get back to the exact same routine I had before, I'm like, okay, well, what feels good now? What works now? What, like, you know, maybe timing changes or the vibe changes. Like, I'm not feeling the gym anymore. I want to hit yoga. Like, you know,
yeah. It's where we move through seasons. And I think it's when we give ourselves a permission. Like when I started seeing myself, not only as a woman who goes through a 28-day seasonal cycle, but I was like, I'm also like nature who has 4 different seasons outside of me living here in Florida. And I'm like, how can I just be like, oh, okay, I'm in a winter season where I just desire to pull back a little bit and not go so hard. And then sometimes I'm in spring and I'm like, I want to go work out and exercise and do all these things because I personally have just been experiencing that. And I'm like, ooh, but it's also finding that trust that you're not going to get stuck in a season that doesn't serve you and because of like laziness, like because body movement, I believe is important and not coming back to like, well, my body doesn't want that right now. You know, I've heard that, but it's like, okay, but are you still doing things that are serving you at the end of the day?
Yeah, I totally get that. So it's so interesting too, because I went through this, I just witnessed myself go through this like winter / more feminine phase where I was hitting the gym like pretty hard and regularly up until I would say, the cold weather started, right? Because I'm in Canada. And then things happened, like my mom passed away in November. So like I said, life happened. And then I moved into this more like feminine play, also in my business too. It was like so fascinating to watch myself. And I paused my gym membership and just have been doing like yoga, not every day. I never do anything every day, but very regularly. I just slowed down for the winter and went inward and nurture myself. And now I'm feeling like the itch. Like I actually am like, do I want to unpause my gym membership? Like spring's around the corner.
You feel different.
Yeah, it's so fascinating.
I love that. And I think it just brings back in more of this feminine energy. I don't want to say movement, awareness around how can we operate in our worlds with more of that feminine energy? Because for me, I operated in such a masculine way and I didn't give myself the permission to take a break. Like I was like, no, I have to work out every single day. And then I went through a season myself where I may have let it lingered a little longer than it should have. But hey, we're here. There's no judgment. And now I'm like, okay, I'm still not desiring to go to the gym. My gym also like isn't fully open. So I've been just doing Pilates and yoga at home. And I'm like, okay, this feels good. I should probably I wish I tried it sooner because I was like, I didn't even think of like, oh, I can YouTube Pilates classes. Like it just didn't like click in my head and going somewhere. But now I know. And so but it feels good. And I feel like I'm more in my feminine energy. It's like, what feels good today? Like today was a walk.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's just that self-trust, that like self-awareness. You come back to it because I do witness myself. Like I call myself a recovering perfectionist. Okay. Because I don't believe that that's something that ever fully goes away. I believe perfectionism exists on like a spectrum and that you're always going to have those moments where you like have the perfectionist like rear its head, right? And so sometimes I witness myself. I'm like, oh, you're getting a little, I don't want to say unhealthy, but like you're getting restrictive in the way that you're approaching this. Like there's a lot of shoulds happening. How can you release that? Like how can you exhale and like, you know?
What are your go-to practices when you come into that awareness? Is there any activities that allow you to give you that like relaxation, release?
I think permission is usually just the thing where I'm like, where am I telling myself I'm not allowed? I just have this conversation with myself where I'm like, where am I telling myself that this has to be this way and this is the only way that it's going to work? And then I go, well, what's actually true? A lot of this actually came to me from studying like the work of Byron Katie. Do you know the work? She has got like 4 questions. It's an inquiry. So the 4 questions are, is it true? can I know for sure that it's true? Who am I when I believe this thought? And who am I when I release this thought, basically?
It's powerful.
And then the after that is a process that she calls the turnarounds. And the turnarounds are like, well, what if the opposite is true? Or like if it's involving someone else and you're like saying, oh, this person is this way or that way, then the question is, well, am I actually being this way or that way? And it's just a really fascinating way to like put yourself in different perspectives, which I love. Perspective is like, well,
it is.
It's everything. And like, you know, A Course in Miracles, I don't know if you're into Course in Miracles, but the definition,
I haven't read it, but I know passages of it.
Yeah. So the definition of a miracle is shift in perspective, right? So like gifting yourself that through I guess to me, it's permission where I'm like, does this have to be true for me?
Yeah.
No, not really. Right. Like, so
cool. What can I do instead?
Yeah. What feels juicy and delicious? What do I need?
I feel like when you become a master at being able to reframe or shift your perspective, that's when you are tapping into your potential versus allowing the circumstances to dictate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing I had to learn from a compassionate lens, because there's also this like really rigid way you can approach that. And like, it's almost like I said before, like gaslighting yourself, like making yourself feel bad about your beliefs or the ways that you feel. Like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Oh, you should have the tools to deal with this. You should have the tools to get yourself out of this funk. You know what I mean? Like, that's yucky.
Yeah, I mean, like, and then that makes you not want to do it more if you're coming with such a like judgy pressure to it.
Yeah. So it's bringing out that shame and just shining a light on it. And that's my strength, is like, I've had all of these thoughts personally as a perfectionist, like going through the manifestation world, and like just having that mental script of like, these are the things I told myself when I was doing that or when I was doing this, and knowing it and knowing that other people are having those exact same thought processes, and they're teachers that they're learning from, that they're learning manifestation from. No one's going, hey, by the way, you might have this like little speed bump or pothole over here when you're doing this process. So just like keep an eye for that and know that it's okay. And here's how you can approach it, like with compassion, to not let that derail you.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. I'm glad that I hope this is supporting those who are listening to really maybe change their view on how they approach things in their life and not to be so hard on yourself. Yeah.
And it's really, really powerful because it frees you back up to be effective. Right?
Yeah. It really does. It sets you free, because right now you're like constricted. You have like all of these rules or labels or attachments on you. But then once you just like give yourself grace and compassion, you're like, you're just fucking human. Like, how can you just see yourself for knowing that you're doing the best you can with what you have in this very moment?
I saw this meme the other day. It made me laugh so much because it was like a stressful day for me. And it was like, maybe, I don't know, a therapist office or something. And then, you know, there's like the inhale, exhale art.
Oh, yeah.
The way that it was positioned on the wall, the meme said something like, if you're feeling stressed today, don't forget to in-ex haha lele, because it was just the way that it was. The way the one word was written kind of, you know,
oh my God.
This piece and that piece, and in ex haha lele. It's funny. And also, yeah, can you just like breathe and exhale and chill? Can you chill?
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. And social media doesn't help. Does not help with this comparison or pressure. I got to do this. And it's like, no, whoa. Says who?
Yeah, exactly. One of the most powerful lessons I learned coming from like that perfectionist people pleasing thing was, the truth is you don't owe anybody anything.
Yeah. And I, when I say that to people, I'm like, I know this is a really tough, like, ooh, it might sting because you think you do, but you really don't. You owe yourself. Like,
Mhm.
why are you allowing yourself? When people put each other, like people pleasing, right? They'll put everybody else's needs first, but them. And I'm like, why do you
Mhm.
allow yourself to disappoint yourself and disrespect yourself
Mhm.
over and over again, but you won't allow yourself to disappoint anybody else? You're
Yeah.
your number one priority at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
exactly. I think the fear is that like people are so afraid of becoming like narcissistic, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the amount that that word is thrown around, and it makes me, like, it gives
Mm-hmm.
me pause because like legit, I had a mom who had personality disorders, and you know, it's used really like lax on the
Yeah,
internet these days, and
it
people
is.
are scared. They're scared of like becoming narcissists, right? But when you really look into that, I mean, the belief I have around any kind of journey, and I do this too whenever I'm kind of learning something new, is I have this tendency to sort of swing too far in one direction and then course correct, and the pendulum always swings back, to the middle
Mm-hmm.
eventually. So it's giving yourself grace um, on the path towards learning how to integrate something new into your life. So the worry is, oh, well, if I love myself or if I become so compassionate with myself, I'm going to, stop caring about other people, or I'm going to do this or this or that. And the fact is, okay, sure, maybe you might really need to go inward for a bit and kind of, yes, maybe some relationships in your life are not going to get the attention that they necessarily deserve, but we only have so much bandwidth, and we need to take that time to really go into our own journey, and then again self-trust to know, and trust in the universe and patterns and cycles to know that the pendulum will swing, and
Mm-hmm.
you do have a good heart, and you do have the best of intentions, and you will have the self-awareness to go, oh, okay, well, yeah, I've been really into my journey myself, and now I'm ready to take care of some of these relationships, and now I'm actually able to take care of them better than I would have before.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully those people see that and can actually also be in a place in their own journey where they have awareness and compassion too, and like can appreciate it, right? So there's just a lot of fear, which I get, and not every relationship will survive your growth, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
something that you can cling to, right?
Yeah, we can't attach to anything. I think having the fear, when people, they have this fear that I don't want to be manipulative or narcissistic. I'm like, well, you're aware of it. You're aware of it so much that you trust yourself not to. Like the fact that you don't
Yeah.
want to, I trust that you won't,
Yeah.
and it's like having that, I believe, like most narcissists, if they are like, don't have that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So like the fact that you do,
Yeah, there you go, right?
yeah. So like
It's
for
huge.
full permission to let go of that fear.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that word has been thrown around. Same with gaslighting.
I know.
I'm like,
I know. I'm like, I've seen it used incorrectly so many times lately. I'm like, I don't think we even know what this means.
me too. Or like trauma bonds, like on my story, on my videos, are like, I'm like, honey, you're talking to a trauma informed coach. Like,
Yeah.
I know what a trauma bond is. That's not my situation, but thank you. At least you know a word that you're
Yeah.
aware of something, but
I
don't
mean, you're on your way.
project.
You're on your
Yeah.
way.
It's just like not everything is everything, right? Like,
Yeah, but I think this is an example of the pendulum swinging, right? Like
mhm.
we're coming into a time in the world where a lot more awareness is being had about mental health.
Oh yeah.
And it's cute, and it's great, and it's funny because I'm hearing like Gen Z, stuff on the internet, and they're talking about relationships with like bringing up concepts like codependency, and I'm like, damn, I didn't even learn what codependency was until I was
Yeah.
past 25. And so cool, maybe we're getting it misunderstood a little bit, but like, hey, course correction is on its
Exactly.
way, and we always kind of swing a little bit too far before we figure it out. And it's cool to see, it's beautiful to see.
Yeah. I think it's cool because it means we're all growing and evolving as a collective. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like we're humans. we learned through our lessons and our mistakes, and coming back again, have compassion with yourself.
And for others. Like, yeah, that's it. When we can have compassion for ourselves, we can also, like, what judgment, for example, right? Whenever we are judging somebody else, it's because there's a story that exists there about how we are not that thing, right? So I give an example when I teach about this, like, hey, you see someone who's out in pajama pants at the mall and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that person would be wearing that in public. And then your next thought, which maybe isn't a conscious thought, is I would never do that because I'm not lazy, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. And so then the thought is, if I were that, I would be bad, I would be less valuable, I would be less worthy. And so there's an insecurity that always exists with that judgment. And it can always start with like compassion for the human experience in yourself first and foremost, right? So that's it's yeah, if you're being very judgmental, if you find yourself being highly critical and judgmental, it's a huge red flag that you are that way to yourself.
Oh yeah, that was a part of my journey.
Dude, I was like super judgy. I never said any of it out loud. Like, I was never a rude, judgmental person outwardly, but oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what do I have to do within? Oh, so the amount of healing on that. But still, again, have compassion with yourself. Even I'll have a judgment thought now, and I'm like, okay, it's just a thought. I am not my thought.
Yeah.
How can I just have grace and
yeah, exactly. I'll have a judgy thought and I'll be like, oh, well, that was mean. And then I'll be like, well, what am I telling myself about me?
Yeah. This is, and again, it's the part of our growth and our awareness. And I think at the end of the day, like, I love your mission and your messaging is just like, go through life in a compassionate way with yourself and with others. And I believe that when you do that, that's when you have more fulfillment and love and happiness in yourself and in your life, because you're not coming from that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to say too, because it can be exhausting, right? Like, it can be just such a full-time job to like constantly be monitoring yourself and your ways of being. That's what I love about the compassion framework specifically, is that it makes it so like your job, your purpose is not healing, right? There's actually this song by Tony Jones. So I don't know if you guys know Tony Jones, but you got to look her up because she's incredible. I actually had her on my podcast, and she's got this one song. She makes affirmation music, and she got one song called Healing Is Not My Purpose.
Ooh.
That was a big thing for me, because I viewed all of this as like I viewed myself as like a DIY fix-it project.
Ooh.
And that is not abundant energy. That is not abundant energy.
It's like you're not broken type of.
Yeah. Yeah. Even there's this lyric in this one Lizzo song, and she's like, you're broken, but you're beautiful. And I was like, no, like that's I love Lizzo and I love her message, but she said that. And I was like, no, you are not broken. Nobody's broken. You may feel, that you've got to put the pieces of yourself back together, but that doesn't mean that you're broken. Right. It's just, yeah,
I agree. You're just a little bent. Just like, let's straighten you back out into alignment and and flow. Yeah. Well, I love this. I love this conversation. And I think it's exactly what I know a lot of my listeners right now are going through, just like heavier times, just based on conversations we've been having. And I know that the reminder to have more compassion with yourself, with where you're at in your life, is going to be the message that I know you guys need to hear right now. Mm-hmm. What would you say? What could you wish you could tell your younger self, whatever age? Like, what is something that you just needed to hear?
Something I would have needed to hear, but wouldn't have been able to hear. How would I have phrased it so I would have been able to understand at that time? because, things don't always land, right? Even if it's the thing you need to hear the most, it doesn't always land because you hear it in a different way, right? You have to be like in a specific place to hear certain things for them to land. But what I definitely needed to hear was like, you actually don't have to do or be anything to be worthy and to be capable. Like, it always was like very much I had to prove it. And it was like everything felt like transactional because it felt like, well, if I don't, then what do I have to offer? How could it be possible that my mere existence could be enough? Because then like I'm just taking and I'm not giving and it's not fair, but I had to really learn that lesson of, everybody's giving and taking, everybody's inconveniencing one another, but you need to trust that your value is not just in what you bring to the table. It's just your heart. Like, people get to see your heart, and that's the thing they value most about you.
I love that. That's a good one. That is good. Ooh. I know some people probably needed that one, and that did land for people who needed to hear that.
Well, that was a hard one for me to learn, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you. What would you say, just because we do talk, you gave some reference, are your top either books that you would recommend or resources that have supported you or your clients on the way for those who want to just dabble in a little more?
For sure. So I have two. The Gifts of Imperfection is actually required reading inside of my main space, which is Master of Manifestation. I'm upgrading it to a mastermind title.
Cool.
Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. I call it my Bible. And the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook. You can get it on Amazon by Dr. Kristen Neff. One of these days, I'm going to have my own book and own workbook.
Heck yeah.
So with this, upcoming creation I have around compassion-focused manifestation. But for now, those are my two outsourced, most valued resources for understanding how to live this way.
I love that. And what about you? What offers do you have? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so the Master of Manifestation, it's still currently called a membership, but it's not really a membership in a traditional sense because it is much higher level. So it's VIP access to all of my courses, and it's basically an everything membership plus group coaching. So there's weekly embodiment calls, and it's a commitment. Like you can join for less time, but the people who join for less time usually come back and end up joining for the full year. So it's like a year-long journey into being an embodiment and making it manifestation your operating system. Like in my messaging, I used to say, make manifestation your way of being so you can manifest in half the time. Does that mean it's a silver bullet or like some specific strategy that I'm going to teach you to like flip a switch and manifest in half the time? No, but will it help you become a much, much faster, better manifester in the long run? Yes, because perseverance and commitment and decision are so valuable and so underrated, especially in this quantum leap culture.
Yeah. I love that. So if they're interested, where can they find you if they want to follow you or learn more information on that?
Yeah. So what the heck was I just going to say? Minstagram, Millifox on Instagram, MILLIFOX. And, I got my highlights that explain things, a link in bio. The Master of Manifestation currently is still on open enrollment, which means you can sign up anytime. I may be making some changes to that. So I don't know when people are listening, but that may not be the case when you hear it, but right now it still is open enrollment. It's my main container. And you also get access to any new and live courses I teach throughout the year. So I don't have a schedule of like live courses, but it's kind of what I feel
I love that
inspired to do along the way, and things that are complementary to the the main topics that
Awesome.
I teach in there. So it's fun. It's amazing. I get to go deep with people. You know, it's not like this quick dip in where people like learn a bunch of info from me and then they, you know, never hear from them again.
It's an experience, and I'm all about that. Well, I'll put all of the links in the show notes, just how to get in contact with you, where to follow you, and whatnot. Thank you so much for being on the show. I loved this conversation. I know we need to spread more of this message. So I'm so grateful that you're doing that. And
thank you. It was really, really great. We went everywhere. Yes.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for everyone for listening, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with me and write an Apple iTunes review so I can keep the good stuff coming your way. If you aren't already following me, you can find me on Instagram at Tatiana_Kuto. Make sure to tag me in any posts that you share. I love and appreciate you so much and cannot wait to connect with you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and radiate your light into the world.